In the village of Osu, they say a bead is just glass unless it is woven by Kamsi. Then it is a mirror that shows you your own soul or your own grave. Kamsi was born with blessed hands, a girl who could find a shard of a broken blue bottle in the dirt and see the eye of a goddess. But in a land where school fees are a heavy burden and feeding is a daily struggle, beauty is a luxury her parents cannot afford. At age 12, Kamsi is cast out of the warmth of her home and sent to live with Mama Chidi, a woman whose heart is as hardened as the cassava she sorts. Mama Chidi does not take Kamsi in out of love, but out of a cold sense of duty. To her, Kamsi's obsession with unique patterns is a useless distraction that leads only to poverty. She treats the girl's talent as a silent rebellion, forcing her into a cycle of fetching water, pounding pepper, and sweeping the compound to keep her hands too tired to create. Yet, Kamsi is a secret rebel. Under the dim glow of a midnight lantern, she turns the house of sorrows into a sanctuary. She scavenges what others discard, shells, bottle tops, and glass, weaving them into masterpieces that dance like fireflies in the dark. While her cousin Adana mocks her work as rubbish, Kamsi is secretly preparing for the grand harvest exhibition. She isn't just making jewelry, she is weaving a great centennial string to buy her parents' freedom. Little does she know, her aunt's jealousy is a sharpening blade, and the very beads she creates will soon become the chains that decide all of their fates. The red dirt road that led to Mama Chidi's compound was the longest walk of Kamsi's life. Not because of the distance, but because with every step, she left behind the smell of her mother's soup and the sound of her father's laughter. Her belongings fit into a single raffia bag, 2 faded wrappers, a cracked comb, and a small pouch filled with broken beads she had collected since she was 7. Those beads were not trash, they were seeds. Seeds of a dream her parents could no longer water. When she arrived, Mama Chidi did not hug her. She did not smile. She stood at the entrance of the mud brick house with her arms folded across her chest, like a guard at a prison gate. Her gaze swept over Kamsi, sharp and dissecting, as if searching for signs of weakness or rebellion. "You will sleep in the boys' quarters behind the kitchen," Mama Chidi said, her voice flat and final. "You will wake before the rooster. You will fetch water, pound pepper, sweep the compound, and wash the clothes. If I hear that you have been wasting time on those useless beads, you will go back to your parents with nothing but shame." Kamsi nodded, but inside her chest, something ancient and stubborn stirred. She had heard stories of girls like her, girls whose talents were buried under the weight of chores and bitterness. But Kamsi made a silent vow that day, standing in the shadow of her aunt's house. She would not be buried. She would bloom in the dark. That night, after the compound had gone silent and the kerosene lamps had been blown out, Kamsi unpacked her raffia bag. She slid her hand beneath the loose floorboard she had discovered in the boys' quarters and hid her pouch of beads there. It was a small rebellion, but it was hers. The house of sorrows had claimed her body, but it would never own her hands. The weeks bled into months, and Kamsi learned to survive in a house that did not want her to thrive. Mama Chidi's routine was designed to crush hope. She woke Kamsi before the sun, sent her to the stream with clay pots so heavy they left grooves in her shoulders, and worked her until her fingers were raw. But what Mama Chidi did not understand was that Kamsi's hands could not be stopped. They were blessed, not cursed, and they found beauty even in suffering. During the day, Kamsi swept the compound, but her eyes scavenged, a bottle cap glinting in the dirt, a shell washed up by the rain, a strip of aluminium foil from a discarded biscuit wrapper. To the world, these were garbage. To Kamsi, they were treasure. She hid them in the folds of her wrapper, slipping them into her secret stash beneath the floorboard when no one was watching. At night, when the house finally exhaled and Adana's snoring filled the air, Kamsi pulled out her lantern. The flame was small, barely brighter than a firefly, but it was enough. She worked in silence, her fingers moving like a spider weaving a web. She threaded bottle caps with fishing line she had pulled from the market trash. She polished shells until they glowed like tiny moons. She bent aluminium foil into delicate spirals that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. Her creations were not just beads, they were prayers, they were weapons. They were proof that even in a house built to silence her, Kamsi's voice could not be stopped. She called her secret collection the Bead House, and every night it grew, shell by shell, bead by bead, hope by hope. Adana had always been a shadow in Kamsi's life, spoiled, loud and lazy in the way only a favored child could be. While Kamsi scrubbed pots until her knuckles bled, Adana sat in the shade, braiding her hair and laughing with friends. While Kamsi ate the burnt edges of rice, Adana devoured the choicest pieces of meat. Mama Chidi's love was an uneven scale, and Adana had long since learned to tilt it in her favor. But jealousy is a strange thing. It does not always come from lack. Sometimes it comes from fear, and Adana was afraid of Kamsi in a way she could not name. It was in the way people's eyes lingered on Kamsi's beadwork at the market, even when Adana wore her finest clothes. It was in the way the village boys whispered about the girl with blessed hands. It was in the way Kamsi's silence seemed louder than Adana's laughter. So Adana became a spy. She watched Kamsi in the mornings, noting the way her cousin's eyes scanned the dirt for treasure. She followed her at night, crouching outside the boys' quarters and peering through the cracks in the wooden door. And one night, when the moon was thin and the air was thick with mosquitoes, Adana saw it. The bead house spread across Kamsi's mat like a constellation of stolen stars. Adana did not confront Kamsi. She went straight to her mother. Mama Chidi's face when she saw the beads was not surprise, it was vindication. She had always known that Kamsi's hands were a curse, a distraction from the real work of survival, and now here was the proof. She snatched the beads from the floor, her fingers trembling with rage, and without a word, she pulled out a pair of sewing scissors. Snip, snip, snip. The sound was soft, almost delicate, but to Kamsi, it was the sound of her soul being severed. Mama Chidi cut through fishing line and thread, through shells and bottle caps, through weeks and months of midnight labor. The beads scattered across the floor like shattered dreams, and when Mama Chidi was done, she looked at Kamsi with eyes that held no mercy.
"This is what your foolishness gets you," she said. "This is what happens when you waste time on things that lead to nowhere." Kamsi did not cry, not then. She knelt on the floor and gathered the pieces, her hands moving slowly, deliberately. And as she touched each broken bead, a thought crystallized in her mind, sharp and cold and clear. Her aunt was not just cruel, she was afraid. Afraid of what Kamsi could become. Afraid that beauty could be a bridge out of poverty. Afraid that Kamsi's blessed hands would prove that Mama Chidi's bitterness had been a choice, not a necessity. If you can't stand people who tear down others just to feel powerful, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Type "Nobody deserves that." Because what happened next only got worse. Kamsi did not rebuild the bead house that night. She did something better. She gathered the broken pieces and realized that shattered glass had edges, edges that could cut, edges that could catch the light in ways smooth beads never could. She began to make what she would later call jagged art, beads that were deliberately broken, deliberately dangerous, deliberately beautiful. And this time she did not hide them under the floorboard. She hid them in plain sight, woven into the hems of her clothes, threaded into her hair, tucked into the corners of the compound where Mama Chidi never looked.
There was a woman in the village named Mama Nkechi, and no one spoke her name without lowering their voice. She lived on the edge of the forest, in a house made of bamboo and tin, and the children whispered that she was a witch. But Kamsi knew better. Mama Nkechi was not a witch. She was a woman who had refused to shrink, and the village had punished her for it. Kamsi met her by accident one afternoon when she was sent to fetch firewood from the forest. She had wandered too far, distracted by a vine heavy with red berries, and found herself at the edge of Mama Nkechi's compound. The older woman was sitting outside, threading cowrie shells onto a length of twine, her fingers moving with the speed and precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "You are the girl with the blessed hands," Mama Nkechi said without looking up. It was not a question. Kamsi froze, unsure whether to run or stay. "Don't be afraid," Mama Nkechi continued, her voice rough but not unkind. "I have been waiting for you." They did not speak much that first day. Mama Nkechi showed Kamsi her workshop, a shed filled with beads of every color and texture, tools carved from bone and wood, and patterns so intricate they seemed to move in the light. She did not ask Kamsi why she had come or what she wanted. She simply handed her a strand of wire and a pile of seeds and said, "Show me what your hands can do." Kamsi worked in silence, her fingers weaving seeds into a pattern that resembled the wings of a butterfly. When she was done, Mama Nkechi studied it for a long moment, then nodded. "You do not need me to teach you how to make beads," she said. "You need me to teach you how to fight." And so began Kamsi's secret apprenticeship. Every time Mama Chidi sent her to the forest for firewood or to the stream for water, Kamsi would stop at Mama Nkechi's compound. The older woman taught her how to source materials from the earth, clay for molding, dyes from roots and leaves, wax from wild bees. She taught her how to make beads that told stories, beads that carried prayers, beads that could silence a room with their beauty. But most importantly, she taught Kamsi that her talent was not a curse, it was a weapon, and weapons were meant to be used. "The Grand Harvest Exhibition is in 3 months, Mama Nkechi said one afternoon, her gaze steady and unblinking. "If you want to change your life, that is where you do it. But you must be ready, not just with your hands, but with your heart. Are you ready to fight, Kamsi?" Kamsi thought of her parents, bent over fields that would never be theirs. She thought of Mama Chidi's scissors. She thought of Adana's mocking laughter, and she nodded. "Yes," she said, "I am ready." While Kamsi labored in secret, Mama Chidi poured all of her resources into Adana. She paid for her daughter to apprentice with the finest seamstress in the village, a woman whose embroidery was so exquisite it was said to rival the work of the royal tailors. Mama Chidi bought Adana bolts of expensive fabric, spools of imported thread, and needles so fine they could pierce a grain of rice. She believed that Adana's future lay in skill, in craft,
in the ability to saw her way into prosperity. But Adana was not her mother's daughter in the ways that mattered. She did not have the patience for precision. She did not have the discipline for repetition. She sat in the seamstress's workshop, pricking her fingers and cursing under her breath, while the other apprentices stitched flawless seams. The seamstress tried to be kind, but even kindness could not hide the truth. Adana had hands made for taking, not creating. Mama Chidi refused to see it. She scolded the seamstress for being too harsh. She bought Adana more fabric, more thread, more chances. She told herself that her daughter just needed time, just needed encouragement, just needed one more opportunity to prove herself. But deep down, in the part of her heart she refused to examine, Mama Chidi knew. She knew that she had bet everything on the wrong child, and she hated Kamsi even more for it.
The Grand Harvest exhibition was 2 weeks away, and Mama Chidi's desperation had curdled into something darker. She had seen the way the market women looked at Kamsi's beads when the girl thought no one was watching. She had heard the whispers about the secret artist who could turn treasure into treasure, and she knew with a certainty that burned in her chest that if Kamsi entered the exhibition, Adana would be forgotten. So Mama Chidi devised a plan. On the morning of the exhibition, she woke Kamsi before the sun and handed her a basket. "Take this to your uncle in the next village," she said, her voice sweet in a way that made Kamsi's skin prickle. "He is expecting it. Do not come back until you have delivered it." Kamsi looked at the basket. It was filled with yams, nothing more. But the next village was a 3-hour walk through the forest, and the exhibition began at noon. If she left now, she would never make it back in time. "But Auntie," Kamsi said carefully, "today is the exhibition." Mama Chidi's smile did not reach her eyes. "The exhibition is not for girls like you. It is for girls with real talent, real training, real futures. You are needed elsewhere. Now go." Kamsi's chest tightened, but she took the basket. She had learned long ago that arguing with Mama Chidi was like arguing with a stone wall. She would have to find another way. If you believe talent should be celebrated, not buried, hit that subscribe button. People like Mama Chidi won't, and you need to hear what she did about it. Kamsi walked into the forest, her mind racing. She could not let Mama Chidi win, not today, not after everything she had sacrificed. So she did something she had never done before. She disobeyed. She walked deep enough into the forest that the compound was out of sight. Then she turned and began to run. Not toward the next village, but back toward Osu, back toward Mamankechi, back toward her future. But Kamsi had prepared for this moment in ways Mama Chidi could never have imagined. For weeks, she had been leaving a trail, not of breadcrumbs, but of beads. Tiny glass shards she had threaded onto fishing line and tied to branches along the path. They caught the morning light and glittered like stars, guiding her through the forest, even when the path grew dark and tangled. It was her secret map, her way of ensuring that no matter how lost she became, she could always find her way back. Kamsi reached the village square just as the sun climbed to its highest point. Her wrapper was torn, her feet were bleeding, her chest heaved with exhaustion. She had run the entire way, her lungs burning, her legs trembling, certain that she had failed. The exhibition had already begun. The square was filled with stalls and laughter, with the smell of roasted plantain and the sound of drums. She was too late. But then she saw Mama Nkechi standing near the entrance, her arms crossed, her face calm, and beside her, displayed on a table draped in white cloth, was the bead house. Kamsi's breath caught. Mama Nkechi had moved it. She had carried Kamsi's work from the secret shed in the forest to the square, piece by piece, and arranged it with a care that made Kamsi's eyes sting with tears. "You are late," Mama Nkechi said, but her voice was soft. "But you are here. That is what matters." Kamsi stumbled forward, her hands trembling as she touched the beads she had thought were lost. They were all there, the jagged pieces, the bottle cap spirals, the shells that glowed like moons. And at the center of the display, resting on a bed of black velvet, was the great centennial string, a necklace so intricate, so radiant, that it seemed to pulse with its own light. "Go," Mama Nkechi said, pushing Kamsi gently toward the table. "Show them what blessed hands can do."
The princess arrived at the exhibition like a storm wrapped in silk. Her name was Adaeze, and she was known throughout the land, not for her beauty, though she was beautiful, but for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. She did not suffer fools, and she did not pretend to admire things she did not love. When she walked through the market square, the crowd parted and the vendors held their breath. She stopped at Adana's stall first. Mama Chidi had spent a fortune on the display, embroidered cloths, intricate patterns, colors that shimmered in the sunlight. But when Princess Adaeze touched the fabric, her expression did not change. She nodded politely and moved on, leaving Adana's face red with embarrassment and Mama Chidi's hands clenched into fists. Then the princess saw Kamsi's table. She stopped. Her attendant stopped. The entire square seemed to stop. Princess Adaeze reached out and lifted the great centennial string, holding it up to the light. The beads caught the sun and threw it back in 1,000 directions, painting the air with rainbows. And then something strange happened. As the princess held the necklace, her expression shifted. Her eyes widened. Her breath quickened. It was as if the beads were showing her something, whispering something, revealing something. "Who made this?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Kamsi stepped forward, her heart pounding. "I did, Your Highness." The princess studied her for a long moment, then looked back at the beads.
"These are not just beads," she said slowly. "They are mirrors. I can see my own soul in them, and I can see yours." The crowd murmured, unsure whether to be awed or afraid. "Tell me," the princess continued, her gaze sharp, "who tried to stop you from making these?" Kamsi hesitated, but only for a moment. Then she turned and pointed at Mama Chidi, who stood frozen at the edge of the square, her face drained of color. "She did," Kamsi said. "She cut my beads, she sent me away so I could not be here. She told me that beauty was useless, that my hands were a curse, that I would lead my family to nowhere." The princess's expression hardened. She walked toward Mama Chidi, the great centennial string still in her hands, and when she spoke, her voice was cold enough to freeze fire. "This girl has created something that will be remembered long after we are all dust," the princess said, "and you tried to destroy it, not because it was worthless, but because it made you feel small." Mama Chidi opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The beads in the princess's hands seemed to glow brighter, and in their light, everyone in the square could see the truth. Mama Chidi's jealousy, her bitterness, her fear. It was as if the beads had turned her insides out for the world to see. Comment talent cannot be buried if you're Team Kamsi. The jealousy can't win. Now watch what happens when she finally fights back. The queen herself arrived at the exhibition that evening, drawn by rumors of the soul mirror beads. She did not come alone. She brought the royal council, the village elders, and a scribe to record what would become known as the sweeping sentence. The queen examined Kamsi's work in silence, her face unreadable. Then she turned to Mama Chidi. "You treated this child as a burden," the queen said. "You tried to silence her gift because it reminded you of your own wasted potential. But you have failed. And now you will serve the beauty you tried to destroy." The sentence was this: Mama Chidi and Adana would work in Kamsi's workshop, which the queen commissioned to be built in the heart of the village, for 3 years. They would sweep the floors, clean the tools, and fetch the materials. They would watch as Kamsi's hands created masterpieces, and they would never again touch a single bead. It was not a punishment of pain.
And every night, when the work was done and the lanterns were lit, Kamsi would take out a single bead, a small jagged piece of blue glass, and hold it up to the light. It was the first bead she had ever made, the one she had found in the dirt all those years ago. It was still just glass, but in Kamsi's hands it was a mirror that showed her own soul. And in that soul she saw not a grave, but a kingdom. If you watched or listened up to this point, comment the country you are watching this from. Represent your country. The village of Osu still tells the story of Kamsi, the girl who turned a house of sorrows into a palace of light.